Welcome to Train Signal. You are watching Preparing for SRM Installation. In this lesson, we will cover what you need to know to prepare your SRM supported storage foundation. We will review the VMware software requirements for a successful SRM installation, and we'll introduce the database requirements and walk through the setup of the SRM database. Finally, we'll review server and network requirements crucial to have in place prior to the install of SRM. And with that, let's jump right in. Shared storage and storage replication is the foundation of a successful SRM installation. Without it, you can't get very far, so it's important to get this step correct since many other steps will depend on it. First, you need to know that VMware SRM only works with supported SRM storage partners. There are over a dozen partners to choose from. To find the latest list of supported vendors, just visit vmware.com and pull up the Site Recovery Manager Storage Partner Compatibility Matrix. Wow, that's a mouthful, but it's easy to find. I'll show you real quick, actually. All right, once you've made it to vmware.com, go ahead and click on Support and Downloads. Actually, don't click on it. Hover your mouse over it and get the drop-down. Under Top Support Resources, you can see that there's a documentation link. Go ahead and click on that. This will bring up the VMware documentation webpage. What I want you to do is go to the right side under the documentation section. Scroll down and find vCenter Site Recovery Manager. Go ahead and click on that. And this will bring you to all of the documentation that you'll need for vCenter Site Recovery Manager. Release notes, admin guide. But the reason I brought you here is so that you could see the SRM Storage Partner Compatibility Matrix. You can go ahead and click on that and download it. I have already done that for us so that you can see there are quite a few storage partners that are out there. In the case of this lesson, we'll be using the HP left-hand P4000 VSA virtual SAN appliance. It's good to know that that's supported. Now that we've checked out the matrix and verified that our storage system is supported, we'll also have a good idea of what else is out there. Maybe you don't have a supported storage system or you're just getting into vSphere and SRM. You'll notice that there are plenty of choices for the protocol, whether it's NFS, iSCSI, or Fiber Channel. All these different SANs have different disk types, whether it's Fiber Channel, SAS, SATA, or even SSD, and different budgets. You can start out at, well, free, as in the case that we're doing here for an eval, on up to an enterprise class SAN. You'll notice that most of those SAN products in that matrix were traditional hardware-based SANs, but there are also some great VSA options available too. VSA, if you're not familiar, is short for Virtual SAN Appliance. And it is basically a fully functional iSCSI or NFS shared storage solution that provides a lower cost entry into the world of storage networking. In some small biz and remote office type solutions, VSAs can actually make a pretty good production solution as well, although your mileage may vary. In the case of a lab, there's probably no better way to go. It's cheap, it's easy, it's low cost, and it doesn't require a data center to cool. In the case for this training, we'll be leveraging the HP left-hand P4000 VSA. Left-hand was one of the first companies to create kind of the VSA market, and they also have a nice production hardware solution that matches their VSA. That's the same software stack, same way to manage. So if you like how this works, you might check them out for a hardware solution. EMC Solera VSA is also another way to go. Traditionally, this was a nice solution for folks wanting to practice their EMC Solera skills without needing to purchase a whole big Solera to play with, but it wasn't necessarily the easiest to set up. At least that's what I found. But in the last few weeks, Nicholas Weaver, one of the EMC V specialists, actually did some work to create what's called the Solera VSA Uber Edition. From all the reviews, it's a lot easier to set up, it's faster, it uses less resources. I really recommend you check it out because it's not just an eval version that's going to go away after about 60 days, like the left hand, you'll actually be able to keep it around indefinitely as long as it's for non-production lab use. So the left hand is a great VSA, Solera is a good VSA, but before you begin to actually implement the VSA, please take a second to actually consider the storage resources that you're going to put behind the VSA. A VSA can perform pretty well if you provide enough disk resources to handle the I/O needs of your lab environment. If you're going to be running 40 virtual machines on this one VSA, one single SATA hard drive isn't probably going to cut the mustard. You're going to want to get a couple either external hard drives to help spread out this load, or maybe look at investing in some sort of external NAS that can provide the back-end storage and spread that I/O over a couple of disks. We're now ready to move forward with the HP left-hand VSA setup for this lesson. But first, let's review what some of the steps are going to be, and so I have an idea of the order in which we're going to go. First, we're going to download the P4000 VSA from the hp.com website. Pretty straightforward, easy stuff. Then we'll prepare the VM for first use within VMware Workstation or ESX. In the case of this lesson, we're going to be using VMware Workstation. Then we'll boot up and configure the VSA from the VM's console within VMware Workstation. Then we'll finish the configuration from the HP left-hand centralized management console, which is a GUI application. Then we will verify that storage is replicating before we begin. And finally, verify that both sites' ESX servers can see the VSA presented LUNs. These are all just a good sanity check before you begin the SRM installation, because if the storage isn't working, SRM is definitely not going to work. So with that, let's go ahead and dive into the demo for setting up the left-hand VSA. Okay, now that we're ready for the HP left-hand VSA setup, we first need to actually get it. So I'll show you that. What I typically do is go into Google, type in HP left-hand VSA, and hit a search. You'll notice that HP has a storage brand called StorageWorks. They've begun to kind of incorporate left-hand into that fold, so don't get freaked out. That's just the new name for HP left-hand, although you'll still see left-hand in a lot of the documentation and the download itself. So we go ahead and click on that, and I'll show you the website. There we are, HP StorageWorks P4000 Virtual SAN Appliance Software. Looks like we're in the right spot. All you need to do is basically click on the 60-day free trial button, fill out the information. If you have an HP login account, you can use that to enter your credentials and then download the demo. If you don't have an account, you'll just have to sign up for your own account or a brand new account. It's not too hard. Okay, now that we have the HP P4000 VSA downloaded, I've actually copied it into two separate folders, one for the protected site, one for the recovery site. If we take a look at this, looks just like a typical virtual machine. You got a VMX file, some virtual disks, NVRAM. Pretty straightforward. Since we haven't configured it yet, I've just copied it, and it's just at a blank state, waiting for username, IP, and all that. So to do that, let's go ahead and I can either open it here or I can actually go into VMware Workstation. I'm going to go into VMware Workstation. And we can go into File and Open. We're going to look for virtual machines. In my case, they're SRM VSAs. And the protected site is where we'll start. We'll go ahead and click Open. This is out of the box. The setup isn't quite ready for not even a production, but not even a decent lab setup. It's only got 384 meg of RAM. It's only got a 7 gig virtual disk. We need to do something here to get it ready to go. So what I like to do is go ahead and click Edit. First things first, VSA is pretty generic, and we're going to have two of these things, so I like to give it a name that's easy to recognize. In my case, it's going to be protected site VSA. Memory, I like to go ahead and set this at 1024 since I have plenty of memory in my system. It'll help it respond a little bit better. As far as networking, you might be able to use NAT in your environment. I'm going to use the bridge networking because I like it to be able to talk to other machines on the physical network. This 7 gig virtual disk is kind of an issue. So what we're going to do is add a completely separate virtual disk that will be used to store the virtual machines and provide the replication. So we want to add some hardware, in this case a hard disk. Click Next, create a new virtual disk. It is a SCSI disk, and go ahead and click Independent. We do not want this virtual disk to be snapshotted if you were ever to snapshot the virtual machine. And we want persistent so that once it's written to, it's immediately written to disk. Here's just a matter of preference, and depending on what you're going to do, you'll want to make sure you set the size appropriately. In my case, 100 gig is good enough for this lesson and good enough for what I'm going to be doing. If you have time and performance is of an issue, go ahead and click this so that all of the disk space is allocated immediately. This will speed up access to the virtual disk later and really help the lab performance work better for you. For the sake of this lesson, I'm going to leave it unchecked so that it will create quickly. I would also name this something a little bit different just so that you keep it straight. In my case, VSA data. Click Finish, and OK. Now this virtual machine is ready to boot up. I'm going to go ahead and do that now so that I can finish the configuration. We'll go into full screen mode so that it's easier to see what's going on. This part can take a while. And there's nothing much to see, so we'll pause and we'll be right back. Welcome back. It looks like our left-hand VSA has finished booting up. We're now going to follow the directions at the login prompt and configure this with an IP address and set up some default user accounts. So we'll do as it says here, type in start and hit enter. Very simple screen here. Go ahead and hit enter one more time. Under general settings, we will want to add an administrator. I keep it simple for the sake of this training. You will want to make sure you write this password down because it makes it a lot easier if you can remember that later when we need to log back in to administer the VSA. Arrow down to hit none or done. That'll actually bring us back to the other menu, and then go to network TCP/IP settings and hit enter. Only one available network device here to edit, ETH0. Go ahead and arrow up and then click enter. Here we want to give our VSA its fully qualified domain name. In this case, we are calling it protected site vsa.trainsignal.local. It could be whatever though. Whatever is in your site you could use. We will also want to set a static IP address. You don't necessarily have to enter a gateway, but if your replicating SAN is on a different network, you will most definitely need to do this so that it knows how to find the other network, and that gateway should be able to take care of that. Double check that you have the correct settings and then go ahead and click OK or arrow down and hit enter. Are you sure you want to modify these settings? I'm sure. I've already checked it twice. It looks good. Let's click OK. Great, the IP address has been set. You want to make sure you document that as well. Now we're just backing our way out. While we're here, we'll go ahead and take a look at network TCP status if you want to take a look. Pretty straightforward stuff. It can show you the speed of the network, frame size. Config management. This allows you to remove it from a management group, which you'll see later, or reset to default settings if you made a boo-boo. Perhaps you set the IP at something that can't be reached by outside computers. Well, you'd want to come back in, reset it, change the IP to something that is correct, move forward. No harm, no foul. I'm going to go ahead and log out, and we will finish the rest of this in the GUI. Okay, now that our volumes are created, it's time to set up replication. To do that, we'll simply right-click on the volume we want replicated and select New Schedule to Remote Snapshot. I'll just use the default name to name the snapshot, and for description I'll say something a little more human readable. Scheduled remote snapshot of VMFS1. Want to make sure that we select a start at time, which I'm just going to take the default. In a production environment, you might choose days or whatever. We're going to actually choose every 30 minutes to do a snap. That way we can get a lot of snaps and be able to roll back quickly during our testing. Management group, this is not an application managed snapshot. We'd like to retain snapshots for a maximum of 3. I don't have much space, so I can't keep too many. If you have more space, you might keep them for longer. Volume name, this is where I'm actually going to click on New Remote Volume. And this actually kicks off a different wizard for setting up the remote volume. So add a volume to existing cluster. This is actually a remote volume, so this goes into the recovery cluster. I'll click Next. For volume name, I'll say replica of VMFS1. That can't get much more descriptive than that, so I don't worry about the description. Network grade 0, none. So there's no redundancy on this since it's a single VSA node on the other end. After that, I'll click Close. Remote snapshots, so I want to keep 3 of it as well. And I'll go ahead and click OK. As you notice there, we have a new snapshot that was created of the VMFS LUN. And there's this relationship that's been established that shows this volume replicates to this remote snapshot. Since there's no data, we're not seeing anything copied. Later on, when I add a virtual machine to this volume, you'll see that there will be data being copied between the volumes. So that's great. We have 2 volumes set up that we can present to our ESX servers. I also have them replicating to the other site. One thing we have not done yet is presented the newly made VMFS volume to the ESX server in our protected cluster. Let's go ahead and do that right now. In order to do that, we do what's called adding of a server. To do that, I clicked on servers and I went to server tasks. Now I'm saying new